Welcome to the HMO Success Podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Whitaker-Large, and I'm here to help you create a profitable HMO portfolio. Whether you're a brand new investor or you've been at it for a number of years, my podcast is here to help you make the most from your business, whether that is starting up, scaling, or systemizing. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you've got an awe-inspiring project, an inspirational investing story, or a unique approach to HMOs, I'd love to hear from you. Hello and welcome to episode 84 of the Ultimate HMO Success System podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Whitaker-Large, and I'm delighted this week to have a very special guest on my podcast. My guest this week, it sounds a bit like Desert Island Discs, doesn't it? But my guest this week is an Irishman who originally moved to London with the intention to stay just 12 months. And 10 years later, he very much likes to call London his home. His name is Declan Boyle. He's got a successful career in corporate finance of almost 20 years, which he still enjoys, but he could not suppress his passion for property anymore. And he's now set up his own property investment company. And it's got a fantastic name. He calls the company is called Tweedmouth Properties. And he might explain why he came to the decision to call it Tweedmouth Properties during our interview. At its core, the company strives to provide ethical, modern, comfortable, affordable, and community-oriented HMOs. So he's got a real strong brand there, and he's thought very carefully about how his company is going to provide co-living in a modern way for young professionals. The great thing about Declan's business is it's also sustainable, but also profitable, a fantastic mix in today's HMO industry. Now, Declan actually completed my 12-month mentoring program and has been through the ups and downs, the highs and lows of what it takes to set up a profitable HMO business. And I'm really pleased that he's here today to tell us more about his own journey. Although he's from London, he actually invests in the East Midlands. And despite the 6-hour round trip, he is making it work successfully. If you want to get in touch with Declan, I've given you the details of his email and his contact details at the end of the podcast in the podcast notes. And I know he'd love you to get in touch if you're interested in what he's doing, how he's done it, and what kind of results he's getting. So Declan, a very warm welcome to you to the Ultimate HMO Success System podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Wendy. An absolute pleasure to be here. And thank you for that intro. I'm feeling a little old actually after the 20 years, but God, it is 20 years. It is what it is. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Declan, you look very good on it. You certainly don't look like you've been working for more than even 10 years. I was very surprised to know that you'd been working for 20 years in your current role.
I'll send you my skin routine.
Quite. Now, Declan, it's been great for me to get to know you over the last couple of years. You know, you started the mentoring program and really threw yourself right in. But before we get into your own HMO background, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start investing in HMOs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, what really inspired me about HMOs specifically is that kind of concept of maximizing the potential of a property, you know, while you can also cater to, I guess, a growing demand in shared accommodation. So I think those two elements, you know, are really fundamental to the business model of getting a property, adding value, and then also finding the area with the strong demand. So, you know, it's something I really loved. I've spent a lot of time as well kind of educating myself on HMOs, you know, say versus the buy-to-let option. So there's some obvious kind of, you know, cash flow benefits to HMOs, although they're not obviously as passive as a buy-to-let option, which we might come into anyways, you know. And I think also there's just this, you know, kind of at a macro level, there's just an increase in demand in the private rental sector for really good, well-maintained, comfortable, cost-effective living spaces. And they do generate a higher yield than those traditional buy-to-lets. So, yeah, I think that's what, you know, kind of fundamentally at a business kind of caught my attention. And then I also really have found this kind of new love for, kind of finding a property and transforming it, reconfiguring it, and trying to create this kind of harmonious living environment for the tenants, which I've really found that detail really enjoyable, actually. Of course, there's challenges to all of this, but I think that's what really got me hooked.
Tell us a bit about your property background before you decided that HMOs was the focus for you.
Yeah, sure. So if I go back, I suppose I purchased my residential property, so based here in East London. I bought a fairly, well, not run down, but it was an old Victorian house in 2018, and we did a full refurbishment on that house. And I quite enjoyed that process. I think I liked the tangible aspect of creating something and seeing it. And funnily enough, I quite enjoyed doing the viewings, dealing with the agents, the whole process. I just really liked it. I've always had a keen interest in property, but to be honest, financially, it wasn't an option for me until recently, where, I think after lockdown, I had a fairly decent pot of cash saved from my day job over, several years. And I really wanted to make that money work for me. So I initially looked at buy-to-lets, like a lot of, I guess, HMO investors. I looked to go into the buy-to-let option, and we did some viewings actually on that. I ran the numbers. I actually did this kind of analysis, Wendy, of it was like with my accountant head on me, this kind of 10-year cash flow forecast of investing in buy-to-lets versus investing in HMOs. And as you can imagine, it just the cash flow, it just aggregates, so much quicker under HMOs. So I knew numbers wise HMOs was the option for me. I guess I didn't know how to get started. And that's when, I started to watch YouTube videos and lots of podcasts. And then I came across your recent book, Wendy, on the extraordinary profits on ordinary properties. I think I got that right.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. That would be pretty bad if I got that wrong. And I love that book.
It's a bit of a tongue twister, so I don't blame you.
No, it's great. And actually, honestly, I'd say reread. I'm not a great reader. I listen to it on Audible, but I re-listen to that book very often. And then, I got in contact with you. I'd done a bit of due diligence on other kind of mentors, but I kept coming back to you, to be honest, as you know. And then we had a call. And then, I said, right, I knew I had to invest in myself. I knew, to make this successful, I needed to almost stand on the shoulder of giants almost, and, work with people who are more successful and better at this than me. And so, I contacted you and we kicked it off probably mid-March last year. And it's just been incredible. It's been great. So I think that's how I kind of got started and into HMOs.
What were your first few months like when you'd made that decision? Yes, we had a call, you joined the mentoring program, and you had now made this fairly momentous decision, because let's face it, you have a very demanding full-time job, you're in a relationship, you've got pets, and they still take time. They're not perhaps as time consuming as children, but they're certainly still time consuming. You've got other commitments, Declan, and you then took on this extra layer of them working with me, with all the demands that I make of you or made of you, and all the the sort of assignments and the way that I keep you accountable to your goals, which is part of what I do as a mentor. How did you cope with that extra layer of, I suppose, workload to a certain degree?
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a great question. It was, I think, the first few months, it was genuinely this kind of like emotional roller coaster. I started early March. I was raring to go. And I am a very enthusiastic. I'm a very positive person. I've got a lot of energy. I'm not good at sitting around doing nothing. So, I'm not afraid of hard work. All of those things, great. I have them. And actually joined the mentoring group. I think that first morning, that Saturday morning call, some of the other mentees were on it. You were doing one of the mastermind sessions. And then, we have a little intro at the beginning, and everyone talks about their kind of, their successes and their challenges. And it was just really inspiring to hear what people were doing. People like me had full-time jobs, people had families, they had, other commitments, and they were making it work. So it was really encouraging. And I think, from the start, and still actually, I fairly, I'm a big advocate for education. So I really, really engulfed myself in all the educational materials on your portal, Mindy. So my aim was at the start, educate myself and be able to make informed decisions. And then, from the start with you, Wendy, we sat down, you really challenged me to set my goals, which I didn't really give much thought to actually prior to joining the mentoring group. And I think that was really, really helpful. So, why am I really doing this? And I guess for me, the aim is to get to a point where, I can match my salaried income and then have the choice, if I want, to either stay in my corporate job or move full-time into property. So, we worked on that. We kind of translated that into monetary terms. And, what I thought was great, Wendy, what you did is once I'd found the location, we broke that goal into, quantifying it into how many units and rooms I would need in my chosen location to meet my goals. So that was really, really helpful. And I think also, the tips you gave and your spreadsheets on the due diligence around the, location analysis was really, really helpful. And then the deal analysis. And then I kind of went off and I did my typical kind of finance thing, bringing in pivot tables and pimping it up and doing all this and essentially doing the same thing anyways. But for me at the start, I did a huge amount of desktop research, a huge amount of education. And actually, I got a little bit of analysis paralysis, as you rightly remember, I'm sure, because you had to, quite nicely pull me up on it and say, the spreadsheets are great, all singing, all dancing, all, they're doing everything, but where are the viewings? Like, you need to go. And I remember you saying to me, you're like, you've got to take action. I was like, right, okay, so that means I have to actually, get away from the comfort of my desk. And,
exactly, move away from the computer.
Yeah, and it's, I suppose it's just that kind of nerd in me. I'm very comfortable with desktop stuff. So, I started to book in the viewings, and, on paper, I'd found, I don't know if you remember, but I had about 15 to 20 locations, like probably a little bit insane at the time, the amount of, investigation I was doing. And then, you were saying you got to cut that down. I think we brought it down to 3 to 5 places. I remember there's one place within my range, so my 3-hour drive range, on paper worked great. As soon as I arrived there, did a couple of viewings, I knew immediately it wasn't going to work. And that's probably one of the few regrets I have, is that I didn't take action in terms of viewings, quicker in conjunction with the desktop. I shouldn't have waited so long. And I think
I do remember having a call with you, yes, yeah. After that location, after you'd visited that location, you said, no, Wendy, it's just not for me. It's not the right location for me. And I think you were kind of a little bit reeling emotionally from it, because I think on paper it had looked so good, and both of us had seen potential properties, and you had these properties lined up to view. And I think we kind of together thought, yeah, this could work. And you just were quite deflated, I think, after that weekend, because I think you thought, oh, good grief, I'm going to have to actually get out and do this. I can't just do it on paper anymore, because on paper I would have made a big mistake if I'd invested in this location, because I've got to physically be there and see it myself, and see whether this is where I feel that my company, my business and my brand can operate. And
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of what you were looking for, wasn't it? It wasn't, the numbers needed to stack. That was a given, but you also needed somewhere where you felt you could actually multiply and develop a business.
That's exactly it. It wasn't scalable in that area, in that it wasn't I suppose it's kind of a small city. But it was, you could probably get a couple of HMOs successfully, but scalable, absolutely not. And then, in those early months, I was doing other viewings in another location that we'd done. Actually quite like that location in the East Midlands. So it's various places in the East Midlands that I look to invest in, visited all of them. I got gazumped. So that was a real kick in the teeth. It's funny because I had so much emotion kind of wrapped up in that deal, and we were about 7 months out of completing, and I think it was June or July, and yeah, I got gazumped, redid the numbers, realized, I couldn't meet anything higher. I couldn't put in a higher offer because the numbers didn't work. And like I genuinely started crying. Like I sat down and it was just this relief from getting upset, but I was so upset about it. And I remember Carlos, my partner, saying to me, like, why are you so upset? Why are you not enjoying this? Why are you so stressed out? And I think it's, as we'll probably talk about, it's just this mindset, my background, the relationship I had with money, how much I have invested in this. And, you were pushing me, Wendy, on my mindset. And I didn't think that that was really important. I kind of come from a corporate background where they don't really look after your mindset. You just have to go in, get the work done, run the numbers. You don't really think about how things are impacting you or why you're making choices. But when it's your own money on the line, it's different. So, we did a huge amount of work on my mindset. I read a lot of books. Well, not read, of course, because I don't like to read, but audibles, but did all of that. And then something really changed, and also the market was really tough back then, for most of 2022, deals just weren't stacking. So those first few months, it was, ups and downs. It was tough, but I got over it. My mindset massively changed with the help of yourself, with all the mentees. It was great.
Let's pause there for a moment, Declan, because that's one of the things that I've noticed probably about your success as much as anything, is that there's been this parallel journey going on between your results and your ability to take action, along with the mindset. So can you tell us a bit more about where you started from and what happened to change your mindset and how that affected you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I won't bore you too much with all the kind of like background detail, but basically, I grew up kind of, west of Ireland, late 1980s, still in recession. We had very little money, as had most families back then. I started working. I really liked school. I knew I had a very good head for numbers when I was in school, and I developed a really, really strong work ethic quite young. So I was working in like a local restaurant. So where we live in the West is quite near like a touristy area. So they get a lot of tourists. There's big demands on restaurants and stuff. So I started working in a restaurant when I was 12, every weekend, school holidays. And I actually think by like the age of 16, I was pretty much running that kitchen. I just loved it. It taught me so much around customer service, how to work with people, the value of money. And I think, this wasn't really written for me, this kind of, I suppose, success I've had in my career. It's not that typical of my kind of background. So maybe a bit of imposter syndrome, I think, as well, went on. And probably lack of self-confidence and all of this. So, went to university. I've always loved business. I did a commerce degree, then I did a master's in financial economics, and then I went straight into corporate life, and then I did my chartered accountancy exam. So, I did a lot of study, a lot of qualifications. I did fairly well out of all of that. I've had a fairly successful career. I was able to buy my house, in 2018. And then I thought, right, that's probably it for me. I'll just do the typical kind of thing. You just work for life, you get a house and you stop complaining. But it was kind of, I think with my mindset, it was a bit of imposter syndrome, a bit of almost a little bit of embarrassment that, who did I think I was, that I wanted to kind of better myself and have another source of income. But actually, I think when I turned 40, Wendy, it gave me a massive kick up the ass and confidence, which, I think a lot of people have when they get a little bit older. And again, I sat down with Carlos and I said, look, this is something I really want to do. I got his kind of emotional support, which has been like invaluable in all of this. And then, working on my mindset, realizing how to take calculated risks, running, even though my background is in finance and they have kind of, those qualifications, I don't think I was necessarily financially literate. So, did a lot of work on that. And, the mentoring group was that kind of catalyst that just shoved me forward and said, you have the confidence to do this. There's a process, people have done this before you, people will do this again. But it's constant for me. I'm always having to work on my mindset.
Well, who isn't? Who isn't?
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
I think that wherever you are, whether you're a multimillionaire, billionaire, or you've got nothing at all, your account's in negative at this point in time. Money mindset, I think, is a lifelong learning process. It's not something that you can change overnight. It takes time, it takes effort. A bit like if you're trying to change your body shape, it takes repeated work, and it takes maintenance as well. And I think that, you were very brave actually many times, Declan, because you would talk to me, and when we had our one-to-ones, you'd explain how you were, and, you told me a bit about your background and some of the issues that you were dealing with. And they might be issues to do with fear, or as you say, maybe an imposter syndrome, or, wondering what other people would think about you. And these are all really important concepts that I think sometimes as property investors, we tend to sort of put on the back burner. We maybe ignore them. And I know that, when I talk about my 5-step system, it breaks it down, it makes it easy for people to understand, and it's a bit like a recipe. But unlike a recipe for, say, baking a cake, actually building wealth really creates a kind of resonance in your internal emotions as well, because money has got so many emotional connotations for most of us, because of our upbringing, because of the way we were parented, because of our experiences. It's not quite the same as eating, although maybe for somebody who's got an eating disorder, they might say, well, no, it is actually, that's exactly what it's like for me. But I think all of us have got a money disorder. I think none of us have come with a perfect money blueprint in our mind.
No,
we
and
all have a slightly wrong one.
Absolutely. And, maybe it's a topic for another podcast, but, schools don't teach financial literacy. That's something I've really realized. Well, I'm not going to get into politics, but there's a reason for that as well. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And also, I suppose for me, Wendy, this isn't necessarily about money, and I've realized that, and you've helped me realize that it's about a lifestyle, it's about options, it's about choices. And it's also about, enjoying life. Like, if you can take that calculated risk, then take it, like, go for it. Like, what is the worst that's going to happen?
Exactly. The great thing about property is you always have a property. If you're investing in property, even if you decide 5 years down the line or 3 years down the line, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, okay, sell it. The great thing is you probably are not going to lose out. Okay, you might lose a little bit. There's some costs involved in buying and selling property, but generally it's not like investing in, say, a cryptocurrency where you could lose everything. You with property, you're always going to have something. Someone is always going to want that thing. So there's always an inherent value there. Okay, well that's really helpful, and thank you for your honesty, Declan, and your willingness to be a bit vulnerable there, because I know that a lot of people listening will find that very, very helpful, because they themselves might be thinking, that's the thing that's holding me back, is my fear, is my concern, is all those other issues that kind of get in the way of actually making this happen. What tips would you give to people who are right now wavering about HMOs?
Yeah, as I was for a long time. I mean, this does sound a bit cheesy, but I think, fortune definitely favors the brave. So you have to be brave. You need to get that confidence if you don't already have it, and be willing to take some risk. But, as I was saying before, a calculated risk. I think that's important. I think definitely, for me, before the mentoring program, and, Wendy, when I was looking at buy-to-lets, I found it quite lonely, actually. I don't know many people. Actually, I don't know anyone investing in property, to be honest. And if they are, in my circle, they're not telling me about it, really. So I think you do have to surround yourself with people that are doing it. So, definitely try and surround yourself with people doing HMO investments. Get yourself out there, get a mentor, get, a network, and just have that kind of community support, because people are very willing to help, which is something I really love about this sector, actually. And I think, the last thing I'd say, Wendy, is it is hard work. There's, I don't think people see that message enough on kind of social media and YouTube videos and all of this. Like other strategies maybe not so much, but HMOs are definitely, as a startup, like any startup business, it is hard work. It's a lot of sacrifices, to relationships, friendships, financial, all of that. It's not a get rich quick scheme. You need to build a lot of grit and resilience. But I think if you have that kind of passion, you're going to overcome all of that, and it will start to be successful. So yeah, I think that's kind of my three things I would say.
That's great. I think that's incredibly down to earth and pragmatic as well. And I love what you said about the people side. What have you learned about people in this process?
Yeah, I mean, I love working with people. That's just something that I've always really, really enjoyed. Essentially now I work, I lead a team of project managers, and it's very stakeholder focused. So I'm used to dealing with people. And I think so far, within property, the mentoring group and everything, it's just been this really like a massive, massive learning curve. You have to learn to interact with a lot of people, a lot of diverse backgrounds, and be aware that a lot of people have their own expectations and reasons. So not everybody is there for your deal, kind of thing. You have to treat people with respect professionally, and be responsive, be empathetic, actively listen. That's a big thing. You don't want to jump in and just talk about numbers. Really understand what the person's situation is, listen to them. It's problem solving. That's what this business is. And be very, very clear and open in your communication, which is something I'm quite good at that in my day job, and I've really tried to be like that. For example, like we're doing the refurbishment project on my current HMO with the builders and all of that. So, that all helps to build this kind of trust. So yeah, sellers are not necessarily looking for the highest price. Like we will probably get into it, but the first two properties, well, the second one I'm just about to complete on, both of them I purchased below market value, and that's not because it was the only offer on the table. They both had higher offers, but because I had built that relationship with the agent, and I'd understood what the landlord was looking for, I got those deals in the bag, which is great. I think, Wendy, as well, what I found in property, which people often say doesn't count, but for me, first impressions really do count. So with people will take an impression of you from the start. So with viewings, I go with the checklists. I go with the what's it called, the kind of laser measuring machine I have. I've got a damp reader. I remeasure every room. So like the agent is taking me serious, the landlord, if they're doing the viewing, they're taking me serious, and they'll open up to you a lot quicker as well, on all of that. And I have done a couple of lease purchase option deals. Well, they're in the pipeline, Wendy, but I won't go into them too much right now because we might go into them later. But that has taught me a lot with dealing with people, and giving people lots of time and confidentiality around the information you're receiving, and that property is the long game. Some people aren't ready to sell yet, but the second lease purchase option, they came back to me after about 3 or 4 months. And then also realizing that with people, you can outsource a lot of what you do in property, and some of it you have to outsource, like the conveyancing, but you still have to do your due diligence. So on the second property that we're completing on next week, to give you an example, with the solicitors, I wouldn't name the firm, but I was sent through the wrong EPC form wrong EPC report for the incorrect address. The TR1 form was filled out wrong. And I think it's the AT10 they call it, is the contents and fittings, that one. That was signed by the seller but not completed. Just loads of mistakes, but ultimately it's my responsibility. Like, everyone is not as invested as you are. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but you can rely on people, but don't rely too much on them either.
I think you learn a lot about people when you're dealing with property, because property is probably one of their biggest, or if not the biggest asset that they own. And as we spoke about earlier about money mindset, you're going to have a lot of attachments potentially to that property. And I think what you've learned on your journey is that people will sometimes say one thing and do another. They'll do one thing and say another. They'll promise you one thing and deliver another. And it's a way of almost revealing people's real innate drivers and motivations and personality types when you've got property in the mix, because it just kind of seems to amplify everything which other people might have weaknesses or might have strengths. Property seems to kind of amplify and magnify that almost, and I don't quite understand why that is. But I've seen that many a time.
And I think you have to manage it, really sensitively. You can't, you do have to take that emotion out. So, if you get, because you want to build up good relationships with people, right? It has to be a repeatable business. But equally, I wouldn't say I'm cutthroat, but, if I'm getting a bad vibe from someone I'm working with, within the process of a purchase or, the build, I'll kind of very professionally, but I will start to cut ties and I won't want to work with them again. Because I want a repeatable business. So I guess, have the courage to walk away, follow your gut as well, because, everyone's intentions are not, as you said, they're not the same as ours as property investors, but equally, do it in a respectful way. But, the buck stops with you. So you can't give full control to someone either.
Tell us about your best deal and why it was your best deal, Declan.
Okay, yeah. So I suppose I don't technically have a HMO up and running just yet, but I do have, well, actually I've got a lot going on in the background. So at the moment, there's kind of 4 deals on the cards, Wendy. The first deal is, and the second deal are very similar, and they're very, very good deals. So I completed on a property in February this year, and it's in a really, really great location. We're actually right beside a hospital. It's 5 minutes to the train station. Great demand for tenants, and in terms of the numbers on that, so if I was doing a kind of if I was telling you kind of a projected refurbishment cost, because obviously we haven't the refurbishment finished yet, but if I was to account for all of that, we're saying a return on capital employed of about, I'd say conservatively 33-34%. Yeah, nice. And net cash flow, again, conservatively, I don't know what's wrong with my words today, sorry. Conservatively, around 14,500, I think. And that's including, I think about 10 to 15% for voids and the higher interest rates and utility bills. And then that 33% return on capital employed is factoring in a kind of a bricks and mortar revaluation, Wendy. So if we get, a higher one, like a hybrid, which I do think is more likely, because we're going from a 2-bed to a 5-bed, 3 ensuite and 1 off suite, with maybe a 20% uplift. We're looking at, 55% return on capital employed. So all money back out within 2 years. That to me is a really great first project. And the second one, which we're completing on next week, I'm buying through modern method of auction, happens to be the house next door to it. So the numbers are pretty much the same. Same, like it's a cookie cutter approach to the refurb. The numbers will be the same. And then the 2 lease purchase options, the first one is fantastic potential. It's a 6-bed. It's a HMO, 6-bed HMO with a separate annex at the back. So overall 7 units. You're talking, I mean, I can go into this again if you like, but it has certain complications, which is why I got it kind of off market. But you're talking of, return on capital employed it's about, I think about 70 to 80%. Like we'll have all money back in just over a year. It's incredible. And I think the rental income net is 26 to 27,000. There's certain complications with that one. It is licensed, but it has an EPC of G. Go figure, that. And there's other issues with the tenants. It's very run down. There's a certain reason why the seller wants to sell. And I've been working on that, negotiating that for months. We now have the legals, so the heads of terms have been agreed and the legals are written up. And then the second property is another lease purchase option. Fantastic location, probably my favorite location actually. And
is that one more city centre location?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's still outside of Article 4, but it's on the kind of edge of Article 4. And it's just a fantastic house. Like when I went in, I had a lovely kind of homely feel to it. Like it's a big 3-level Victorian house,
Amazing.
easily 5 to 6 bed HMO, very generous rooms, very complicated situation. It would take ages to explain to you. I'll talk to you offline about this, but we've come to a solution now with the seller on that. And the numbers are probably not as strong as the first lease purchase option, but still, the KPIs are amazing on it. So
I think what's really impressive though, Declan, is you've done this alongside a full-time job and all your other commitments, and you've got 2 HMOs and you've got 2 lease options in the pipeline in a year. I mean, that is incredible success. I think most people would think, wow, if I could have achieved that in 12 months, I'd be really doing well. Because for a lot of people, it takes them about 8 or 9 months before they actually really start doing anything. I speak to people regularly who've been on other people's mentoring programs, but also just kind of decided to invest in HMOs, whether they're being mentored or not. And it takes them ages to get going. And I know in the early days you were frustrated because you thought, I'm not getting going quick enough. But actually look at how much it's kind of snowballed since then. And, these lease option deals that you've been doing are quite complex. They're not easy situations to be dealing with. You've got some difficult complications of relationships and entanglements and all sorts of other things going on there. So, I think this is quite extraordinary that you've kind of pushed this far and got this far. And I think once they get over the line, which I've got no doubt they will do, it's just going to be a case of time and the stars aligning to make it happen. I think it's going to be, super exciting for you to have those other properties in your portfolio.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's really kind to say. I suppose it's, it's nice to kind of reflect back. It's something that we probably don't do often. But it's been a accumulation of, the mentoring group, support from Carlos, from friends and family, an awful lot of hard work. The lease purchase options have been, I've really enjoyed them actually. That was just, sitting at the kitchen table over weekends, sitting out direct to vendor letters. The two of us sat down, we'd spend hours and hours, as you know, Wendy, doing all this. But I had to, you were pushing me to get outside of my comfort zone on this. That is something I would never ever have done ordinarily. Like the idea of it, I thought this is never going to work, and it's hard to make them work. But I think if you don't do it, if you don't put the action in, you won't get a reaction right to it. So it's been a great year actually. It's I can't really complain.
Well, Declan, I think it's been amazing to have you on today. Thank you for being a guest on my podcast. I think for anybody who's starting in HMOs who maybe feels like you did a year ago, that you've got some money to invest, you're keen to get going, but you needed a bit of guidance and support. And obviously, as we've mentioned, I run a mentoring program, but you don't have to be mentored by me. But I think there is an element of probably all of us need someone who can hold them to account, who can help them devise a plan, who can fill in some of the gaps in their knowledge. But you yourself have been very motivated, Declan, to read around the subject, to listen to lots of different podcasts. I've learned a lot from you, huge amounts from you sharing things, improving my spreadsheets. That's been a great gift to me. And your energy and your enthusiasm has really, I think, rubbed off on so many people who you've met with. And I just really want to say thank you very much for letting me interview you today and almost kind of tie up what this last year has meant to you. But also, I think thinking ahead for the future. We're in the middle of 2023. Can you give us a brief glimpse before we close on what your plans are for the rest of the year, what you'd like to achieve by December of 2023?
Yeah, no, absolutely good. Yeah, I mean, time is flying. So yeah, for me, Wendy, for the property business, I think it's going to be a very busy year. We've got one refurb project about to kick off, and then the second property will complete on next week, and that will be a refurbishment. So we're adding value there as well. It's the same, it's a 2-bed to a 5-bed HMO. So I want to focus on that. I'm quite looking forward to running the refurbishment project and gaining that experience. I really want by Q3, by the end of Q3, I definitely want to have another project, an offer accepted on, potentially something bigger, maybe a 6 to a 7-bed, because I feel like I'm ready for that now. And then, keep working on the 2 lease purchase options, do more direct to vendor campaigns, because I think with the way that the kind of wider market is at the moment, and the rent reform bill that came out, I think a lot of landlords are probably going to look to sell up. So it could be a good opportunity for someone like me starting out. But I also want to work on, creating this kind of, business that I want to run, and then start scaling that up. So I'm keen towards the end of the year to have a really good business that I'm proud of, open the business to work with investors. I think I'm proven to myself now that I'm really capable of sourcing good deals. I'll be running the refurb projects, managing in-house the tenants. I'm very good at, the financing and then ultimately the refinancing process. So I think that's a real skill that we can provide to, investors that, have some money in accounts that they want to see really work for them. And, that is, in reality getting eroded by inflation at the moment. So I think that's going to be the focus. And I really want to maybe look at building out our in-house kind of tenancy management leg of the business, and then maybe offer that to other landlords who have properties that they're frustrated with, running, or that they're frustrated with other agents, how it's been ran, that we could help to run those properties for them. So yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. It's a lot on. I've got an Instagram page as well set up. So, I'm, as you said, I guess I'm fairly upfront with everything. I like to kind of share what I'm doing. I've started sharing some of that on the Instagram page, Tweetmouth Properties. It's Tweetmouth Properties.
Tell us, I did refer to this in my introduction. How did you come up with that name, Declan?
I know. I've actually reconsidered so often renaming this because the amount of times I've had to spell it out. So it's a little bit cheesy, but because I obviously had a lot of emotion involved in being able to buy my first property, and that happened to be on Tweedmouth Street. And it's and I really love where we live in East London. And it's just such a nice street, and we just love this street. We love living here. We've a lot of good memories here. So I just thought, this really is a special street to me, and if I can kind of create something where someone feels happy living in, I just thought I would just use that name, Tweedmouth. TWEEDMOUTH. And that's it. So, but it's been a bit of a tongue twister as well, Wendy, naming this out. But that's the kind of cheesy background to it.
Well, I think it's great. I think it's unique. It stands out. And ultimately, who cares what the name is?
Yeah.
People can get very exercised over what to call their property business, but as you're demonstrating, and as we know oh so well, it's not what you call it that matters, it's what you do in it that matters. Mm-hmm. And I think, Declan, your business is very exciting. I think you've got a great future ahead of you. I love the brand that you're creating. I think it's really exciting. So if people want to get in touch with you, maybe there might be somebody listening who's got some money sitting in the bank and they'd like to maybe talk to you about how they could invest it with you. I'll put your email address at the bottom of the podcast in the podcast notes, and also the Instagram handle. So if anyone wants to follow you, they can click through and see what you're doing on Instagram. But I'd just like to say thank you so much, Declan Boyle, for being a guest today. And I'm sorry we haven't listened to any of your Desert Island discs. Maybe we'll get around to that next time.
Next time. I know. Thank you, Wendy. I was saying this to you at our last event. You've been, a massive inspiration to me. I love your success story. I love the way that you work, the way that you treat people, the way that you explain things. There's no hard sale, and you're a good friend. Honestly, it has been life-changing for me. So, I have a huge amount of respect for you. So no, thank you for everything and this opportunity. I've really loved it, actually.
Great. Well done. And the check's in the post.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the HMO Success Podcast. If you'd like to know more about how you can create a profitable HMO business, please visit our website, hmosuccess.co.uk, to find out more. We have plenty of free tools and information for you there, and also on our Facebook group, The Ultimate HMO Success System. We look forward to connecting with you very soon. Thanks for listening.